I never considered myself the paranoid type. Really, I didn't. But if you had kids, you'd understand, the second they're born, your mind rewires itself to always assume the worst. Every fever feels like a medical emergency, every bump in the night sounds like a break-in, and every stranger suddenly seems like a potential threat. It's just how parenting works. That's why, when I decided to install a nanny cam in our living room, it wasn't because I didn't trust my wife, Haley. It wasn't even because I didn't trust the babysitter, Sophie. It was just, for peace of mind. A backup, just in case. I work long hours at an advertising firm, pulling late nights more often than I'd like, while Haley stays home with our 2-year-old, Noah. Well, mostly stays home. She recently went back to work part-time as a fitness instructor, and with me working overtime, we needed help watching Noah in the evenings. That's where Sophie came in, a bright, bubbly college student that our neighbors swore by. She was great with Noah, always keeping him entertained, and Haley seemed to adore her. But I had this feeling, this nagging suspicion that something was off. Maybe it was how Sophie started showing up earlier than needed, even when Haley wasn't home yet. Or how Haley was suddenly making more late-night runs to grab groceries, or meet a friend. Or maybe it was nothing. Maybe I was just being a paranoid dad. But then, last night happened. I was stuck at the office until after midnight, tweaking a client's campaign for the umpteenth time, when I decided to check the nanny cam feed from my phone. Just a quick look, see if Noah was asleep, make sure everything was normal. But what I saw? Not what I expected. Not even close. Noah wasn't in the living room, he was asleep in his crib, where he should be. The living room lights were dimmed, the TV was off, but there was movement. Someone was there. At first, I assumed it was Sophie cleaning up before heading out, but as the figure stepped into view, my stomach twisted. It wasn't Sophie. It was Haley. And she wasn't alone. My breath caught in my throat as I stared at the screen. The nanny cam was grainy in the dim light, but there was no mistaking it, that was Haley. And she wasn't supposed to be home yet. She had told me she was grabbing dinner with her friend Lauren, which, now that I thought about it, was the third time this month she'd made last-minute plans with her. I had barely questioned it at the time. But now, watching her on the feed, I had a sinking feeling in my gut. She was moving fast, her head turning toward the front door, then back to the hallway. Checking for something. No, checking for someone. Then, the second figure entered the frame. I clenched my jaw. My pulse pounded in my ears. A man. Tall, broad-shouldered, and way too comfortable walking into my house. I couldn't see his face, just the dark hoodie he wore and the way Haley grabbed his hand, pulling him deeper into the house like she'd done this before. Like they had a routine. A million thoughts flooded my mind. Was I seeing this right? Who the hell was this guy? Was he a friend? A relative? Maybe someone from her fitness classes? But then Haley did something that shattered every excuse I could come up with. She laughed. Not her usual laugh, not the one she gave me or even our son. It was different, soft, teasing. The kind of laugh she used to make when we first started dating. My stomach twisted. I needed to get home. Now. I shoved my laptop into my bag, barely remembering to lock my office before sprinting to the elevator. My hands were shaking as I called an Uber, my mind racing a mile a minute. Had she been doing this for weeks? Months? Had Sophie known? Was she in on it? And most importantly, what the hell was I about to walk into? The Uber couldn't move fast enough. I sat in the back seat, gripping my phone so hard my knuckles turned white. The nanny cam feed was still open, but I couldn't bring myself to watch anymore. My mind was already torturing me enough, filling in the blanks with worst-case scenarios. Who was that guy? How long had this been going on? Was Noah asleep while this was happening? Right upstairs. The driver glanced at me through the rearview mirror. You good, man? Yeah, I lied, my voice tight. I wasn't good. Not even close. The moment the car pulled up to my house, I didn't even wait for it to fully stop. I threw the door open, tossing a crumpled bill at the driver before sprinting up my driveway. The house was dark except for a faint glow from the living room. I hesitated. My own home felt foreign now, like stepping onto a crime scene before the tape had been put up. My breathing was ragged as I reached for the doorknob, willing myself to stay calm. I pushed the door open as quietly as possible. I needed to be smart. If I barged in swinging, I wouldn't get the answers I needed. And I needed answers. The house was silent except for the faint hum of the fridge. I crept inside, my ears straining for any sound, footsteps, whispers, the rustling of clothes. Then, I heard it. A low murmur. From the hallway. I moved forward, heart hammering, every muscle in my body tensed. The bedroom door was cracked open just enough for a sliver of light to spill into the hallway. I reached out, fingers curling around the edge of the door. And then, I pushed it open. The door swung open. And there she was. Haley. My wife. The mother of my child. Lying across our bed, tangled in the sheets, with him. For a split second, the world slowed. It felt like I had stepped outside of my own body, like I was watching this unfold in some nightmare I couldn't wake up from. Haley gasped, her entire body jerking upright as she scrambled to cover herself. The guy beside her, some tall, bearded dude with the kind of gym rat muscles that made my blood boil, reacted slower, blinking in confusion before realization crashed over him. Oh, Don't, I growled, my voice barely human. My hands clenched into fists at my sides, my entire body shaking. I had no plan, no script for what to do in a moment like this. Haley was already moving, her face pale, eyes wide with shock. I can explain. I let out a bitter laugh. Explain? How the hell do you explain this? What? I snapped. You gonna tell me he tripped and fell onto you? That you just accidentally ended up in our bed with him? Her mouth opened, but nothing came out. The guy, who still hadn't put his damn shirt back on, stood up, raising his hands like he thought I was about to swing. And maybe I should have. Maybe I would have, if it weren't for one detail that hit me like a freight train. His face. I knew him. The pieces slammed into place in my head so fast it made me dizzy. I spat. No. No way. Because standing in front of me, half-dressed and looking just as guilty as Haley, was Eric. My son's babysitter's boyfriend. Sophie's boyfriend. My brain short-circuited. This wasn't just some random guy Haley met at the gym. This wasn't some stranger. This was someone who had been in my house before. Multiple times. My voice was dangerously low. You sat on my couch. Ate my food. Played with my kid. Eric had the audacity to look ashamed, glancing at the floor like that would make this any better. Look, man, Shut up. I was seeing red. Every muscle in my body was coiled, ready to explode. But then. A sound. A small, sleepy whimper from the hallway. Noah. I turned, and there he was. Standing in the doorway, rubbing his tiny fists against his tired eyes, clutching his stuffed bear to his chest. Daddy, he mumbled, his voice groggy. Why were you yelling? And just like that, the rage drained out of me. Replaced with something worse. Something colder. I forced my fists to unclench, inhaling sharply through my nose. Haley was frozen, staring at Noah like she just realized the actual weight of what she had done. Eric took a step back, eyes darting between us like a trapped animal. I straightened. I said to Haley, voice low and steady, get dressed. Now. She swallowed hard but didn't argue. I turned to Eric, the disgust in my voice unmistakable. You have 60 seconds to get the hell out of my house before I stop caring if my kid is watching. I have never seen a man move faster. Eric grabbed his clothes and bolted, practically tripping over himself on the way out. The front door slammed, and just like that, he was gone. But the mess he left behind? That wasn't going anywhere. I turned back to Haley, who was now fully dressed but shaking like a leaf. I could see it in her face, the panic, the fear, the desperate calculations running through her mind. I took a deep breath, then knelt down beside Noah, ruffling his hair like this was just another normal night. Like his whole world hadn't just shifted under his tiny feet. Hey, buddy, I said, forcing my voice to stay even. Let's get you back to bed, okay? He yawned and nodded, trusting me completely. I carried him to his room, tucking him in while Haley stood frozen in the hallway, not daring to make a sound. I kissed Noah's forehead, then quietly shut his door. And then I turned to Haley. And finally, I let myself feel everything. The second Noah's door clicked shut, the dam burst. I turned to Haley, my entire body shaking with barely restrained fury. She stood frozen in the dim hallway, eyes wide and glassy, like a deer caught in headlights. Like she still couldn't believe she got caught. For a long moment, neither of us spoke. Then. How long? My voice was low, steady. Too steady. Haley flinched. What? I stepped closer, and she instinctively took a step back. How long? Her lips parted, but no sound came out. She swallowed hard, glancing away. That's what I thought. I let out a sharp, bitter laugh. Jesus, Haley. In our house? In our bed? While I was out busting my ass for you? Her lower lip trembled. I didn't. Don't lie. My voice dropped to something lethal. Not after I just walked in on you. Tears welled in her eyes, but I wasn't buying the act. Not this time. I never meant for you to find out. The words slipped out before she could stop them. I let out a breath. You never meant for me to find out, I repeated slowly. That's what you're leading with? Not that you're sorry. Not that you regret it. She paled. That's not what I. What else aren't you saying, Haley? Silence. Then, so quiet I almost didn't hear it. It wasn't just tonight. I stared at her. Everything inside me turned to ice. I had braced myself for it. Expected it. But hearing her actually say it, hit like a punch to the ribs. I turned away, dragging a hand down my face, breathing hard. I was lonely, she whispered, voice cracking. You're always working, always gone. And Eric was just there. He listened. He paid attention. He made me feel. I snapped my head toward her. Don't finish that sentence, ***. She shut her mouth fast. I shook my head, laughing bitterly. So what? That's your excuse. I work too much, so you sleep with a guy who hangs around my kid. I never meant for it to get this far, she choked out. I stared at her, disgust curling in my stomach. Do you even hear yourself? She wiped at her face, shaking her head like she wanted to turn back time. I was gonna end it, she whispered. I swear, I was gonna end it, but. But what? I cut in. But you liked sneaking around too much. But you enjoyed the lying. She didn't answer. She didn't have to. I exhaled sharply, pushing past her toward the stairs. I needed space. Needed to think. Where are you going? She asked, voice small. I paused at the top step, gripping the railing so hard my knuckles ached. To figure out how to get you out of this house. And with that, I walked away. Haley hadn't followed me. Good. I didn't want to see her. Didn't want to hear another pathetic excuse tumble from her lips. I needed space. Needed to wrap my head around the absolute mess I had just walked into. Because this wasn't just a mistake. It wasn't a one-time thing. She had admitted it. This had been going on for who knows how long, with a guy I had unknowingly let into my house. A guy who had been around my son. That thought made my stomach twist. I pulled out my phone, my fingers itching to do something. Call someone. A lawyer? My best friend? Sophie, to tell her what a lowlife her boyfriend was. I exhaled sharply, dragging a hand down my face. No. Not yet. I needed a plan. Divorce. The word sat heavy in my chest. That was the logical next step, right? But how? We had a kid. A house. Shared accounts. And despite what she had done, I wasn't about to let her take Noah away from me. She wasn't the only one who could keep secrets. I stood abruptly, grabbing my laptop and heading to my office. I flicked on the desk lamp, the glow casting eerie shadows against the walls. My hands were steady as I pulled up our financials. I knew Haley. I knew how she thought. And if she had been sneaking around behind my back, there was a good chance she had been hiding other things too. I started digging. And I found them. A credit card statement with charges I didn't recognize, hotels, fancy dinners, expensive gifts. Ones that sure as hell weren't for me. A private bank account. It wasn't much, just a few thousand tucked away under a name I didn't recognize at first. But when I looked closer, the picture became clearer. She had been planning to leave me. My breath hitched. Not just leave. She was getting her finances in order. She was preparing. For what? I scrolled further. One particular charge stood out, a lawyer's consultation fee. Cold fury settled in my bones. She was going to divorce me first. I clenched my jaw so tight it ached. This wasn't just cheating. It wasn't just betrayal. She had been planning an escape. A life without me. And yet, she was still here. Still sneaking men into my house, still sleeping in my bed, still playing house like nothing was wrong. She didn't leave first. Which meant something changed. And I needed to know what. A knock at the office door snapped me back to reality. I inhaled slowly, schooling my expression into something unreadable. What? The door cracked open. Haley peeked inside, her face blotchy from crying. I just wanted to talk, she whispered. I stared at her for a long moment, then shut my laptop. Fine, I said coolly. Talk. She stepped inside hesitantly, twisting her hands together. I know you hate me. I know what I did was unforgivable, but, please, just listen. I raised a brow, leaning back in my chair. Listening. She hesitated, licking her lips. It's not what you think. I laughed dryly. That's funny, because I think I just walked in on my wife screwing another man in our bed. So please, Haley, enlighten me, what exactly do I have wrong? She flinched. But then, something shifted. Her face steeled. And then she said something I never expected. You were supposed to be gone longer. What? My pulse stuttered. Not, I'm sorry. Not, it was a mistake. She was just angry I caught her. That was it. That was all I needed to hear. I stood, forcing her to take a step back. You need to pack a bag, I said, my voice eerily calm. And you need to get the hell out of this house. Her eyes widened. Jake. No, I snapped. I'm done talking. I grabbed my phone, pulling up my recent calls. You're leaving. Right now. Or I'm calling the cops. She blanched. What? No, Jake, we have to figure this out. We. I laughed bitterly. There is no we anymore, Haley. Her face twisted in desperation. Noah. I saw red. Don't, I snarled, stepping toward her. Don't you dare pull the mom card now. Tears pooled in her eyes. Where am I supposed to go? Not my problem. She opened her mouth, then shut it again. Because she knew. She knew she had lost. She turned sharply and stormed upstairs. I followed, watching as she threw clothes into a duffel bag with shaking hands. She didn't speak. Neither did I. And then, 15 minutes later, she was gone. I locked the door behind her. And then I exhaled. For the first time in years, I felt free. But something still nagged at me. Because Haley hadn't fought me. She hadn't begged to stay. She left too easily. And that meant this wasn't over. Not by a long shot. The house was silent. For the first time in years, it was just me. No Haley. No lies hanging in the air like smoke. No betrayal curling around the corners of every conversation. But the silence didn't bring relief. It felt wrong, like the calm before a storm. I stood in the entryway, staring at the door I had just locked behind her. My pulse was still racing, my muscles still tight with adrenaline. She was gone. I had finally thrown her out. But something gnawed at me. She had left too easily. No fight. No screaming. No desperate pleas to stay. That wasn't Haley. That wasn't the woman I knew, the woman who once fought tooth and nail to get what she wanted. She had been planning to leave me first. She had a separate bank account. A lawyer. An escape plan. But she never followed through. Why? Something wasn't adding up. I exhaled sharply, rubbing a hand down my face. My body felt wired, like it hadn't caught up to what just happened. Like the full weight of this mess was still creeping up behind me. I turned on my heel and headed back to my office. If she thought she was the only one who could keep secrets, she had another thing coming. I opened my laptop and pulled up the nanny cam feed again. The footage was all still there. Every second of it. Haley sneaking Eric into our house. The way she had checked the front door before letting him in. I rewound it. Paused. There. That moment. Her checking the front door. My stomach twisted. She hadn't been checking to see if I was home. No, she had known I was gone. She had been making sure no one else saw him come in. I clicked through the footage, moving backward now, looking for anything I had missed before. And then. Something worse. I clenched my jaw as the timeline jumped back 3 nights. Another recording. Another visit. Eric. Again. Same time. Same sneaky entrance. I watched, my hands tightening into fists, as he walked inside, kissed my wife like he belonged here, and then followed her upstairs. I fast-forwarded, bile rising in my throat. This wasn't just an affair. This was routine. My hands shook as I slammed the laptop shut. My phone buzzed, and I nearly jumped out of my chair. I grabbed it off the desk, my breath coming short. Haley. I exhaled through my nose, my grip tightening around the phone. My finger hovered over the decline button. Then, at the last second, I answered. Silence. Then. Jake. Her voice was small. Careful. Calculating. I didn't say anything. She took a shaky breath. I know I screwed up. But we need to talk. I leaned back in my chair, forcing my voice to stay calm. Controlled. About what? Another pause. Then. About Noah. My blood ran cold. She was playing that card. I clenched my teeth. We're not doing this over the phone. Say what you need to say. A pause. Then, softly, please, Jake. Can we meet? There it was. The trap. I exhaled slowly, forcing down the white-hot anger in my chest. I could feel it now, how careful she was being. The lack of panic. She had a plan. And she wanted me to walk right into it. I let the silence stretch just long enough for her to think I was considering it. Then I said, fine. Another breath from her, this one shaky. But not nervous. More like, relieved. Tomorrow morning, I said. At the cafe on Pine. 9 a.m. Okay, she whispered. I'll be there. I hung up before she could say anything else. Then I sat there in the dark, thinking. And finally, I knew. This wasn't over. She had left too easily because she didn't have to fight. She already had a backup plan. And tomorrow? I was going to find out exactly what it was. The house was too quiet. Even with Haley gone, I still felt her presence like a ghost lingering in the walls. Like the betrayal had soaked into the furniture, the floors, the very air itself. I sat in my office, staring at the laptop screen. The nanny cam footage was still paused, frozen on Haley and Eric sneaking through my front door. I had all the proof I needed. But proof wasn't enough. I needed to bury her. This wasn't just about cheating. This wasn't just about heartbreak. This was about taking everything back, my house, my son, my life. I clicked open my email and started typing. Subject, urgent, divorce representation. I didn't even have to think about it. I already knew which lawyer I was choosing. Diane Costello. The best damn divorce attorney in the city. Ruthless. Unforgiving. The kind of lawyer who didn't just win cases, she destroyed the other side. And Haley? She was about to learn exactly what kind of mistake she had made. The reply came within an hour. Mr. Carter, I have reviewed the preliminary details of your case. We need to meet immediately. My assistant has scheduled you for an appointment at 3 p.m. today. Come prepared. This will be a war. I smiled. Perfect. 3 p.m. Law Office of Diane Costello. Diane's office looked exactly like I imagined, minimalistic, but powerful. Everything in it was designed to intimidate, from the massive dark wood desk to the degrees and awards lining the walls. Diane herself. Mid-40s, sharp features, piercing gray eyes that looked like they could see right through me. She didn't do small talk. Sit, she ordered the second I walked in. I obeyed. She folded her hands. Tell me everything. And I did. I told her about the late nights. The lies. The nanny cam footage. The secret bank account. I told her about Eric. About Haley's exit strategy. And when I was done, Diane smirked. She really thought she could outplay you. She shook her head. Amateur. I leaned forward. I want full custody of Noah. I want the house. And I want her to walk away with nothing. Diane nodded. We can make that happen. Then she paused. Studied me. But you should know, this won't be clean. Haley is going to fight back. And when she does, she's going to play dirty. I exhaled. Let her try. Diane's smirk widened. I like you, Carter. She slid a document across the desk. Sign this. We start today. I grabbed the pen without hesitation. And as I pressed ink to paper, I made a silent vow. This wasn't just a divorce. This was a reckoning. And Haley? She was about to lose everything. I barely made it home before my phone started ringing. Haley. I let it ring. Let it keep buzzing in my hand, debating whether or not I should answer. But I already knew she wouldn't stop. Not after she got the divorce papers. I exhaled sharply and swiped to accept the call. The second I put the phone to my ear, she was already talking. Are you serious, Jake? You hired Diane Costello? I smirked, leaning back against the kitchen counter. Oh, so you do read your mail. She let out a bitter laugh. You're really doing this? You're actually trying to take everything from me? I stayed silent. She knew the answer. Her voice hardened. You don't get to play the victim, Jake. We both know this marriage wasn't perfect. I clenched my jaw. Maybe not. But I didn't cheat. I didn't lie. And I sure as hell didn't invite someone else into our house while our son was upstairs sleeping. Silence. For the first time, she didn't have a response. I took advantage of it. It's over, Haley. You wanted out. Now you're getting it. She exhaled sharply. I don't care what you think you have on me. You're not taking Noah. Ah. There it was. The real fight. My grip tightened on the phone. Yes. I am. She laughed, but it was hollow. Oh, really? And how do you think that's going to happen? I smiled. Because I have you on camera. Silence. I could almost hear her heartbeat pick up. What? She whispered. I pulled my laptop onto the counter and clicked play. The sound of her voice filled the room, laughing, whispering. Eric's voice blending in. The sounds of her betrayal echoing back at me. She had been caught. Dead to rights. You're bluffing, she whispered. I chuckled. Am I? She didn't speak for a long moment. I could hear her breathing getting shaky, could feel the panic creeping in. Good. Then, just as I was about to hang up, she said something I wasn't expecting. Fine. You want war? Her voice was ice cold. You're gonna regret this, Jake. Click. She hung up. I stared at the phone in my hand, my pulse pounding. Because something in her voice told me she had just declared war right back. And I had no idea what was coming next. The next morning, my lawyer called. Diane Costello's voice was as sharp as ever. She lawyered up, she said, without even bothering to greet me. I leaned back in my chair, exhaling slowly. Figures. Who'd she get? Richard Mathers. I let out a short, humorless laugh. Of course she did. Richard Mathers was the kind of lawyer women hired when they wanted to play the victim, when they wanted to twist the narrative and paint themselves as the suffering, innocent wife. The kind of guy who would throw everything at the wall and see what stuck. Diane, however, sounded unbothered. He's going to try to frame you as an absent, neglectful husband, she continued. He's going to say your work schedule left Haley feeling emotionally abandoned. I snorted. Right. And I guess that justifies screwing a 20-something in our bed? Exactly, Diane said dryly. But it won't stop there. She's going after custody, Jake. She's filing for full rights to Noah. That hit me in the gut. For a moment, I couldn't speak. I had expected her to fight back, I wasn't an idiot. But this? She's seriously trying to take my son away from me? My voice was low, dangerous. Diane sighed. It's a bluff. She doesn't have the resources to win. But she's hoping you'll panic and agree to some ridiculous settlement. I smirked. Haley was a fool. If she thought she could scare me into backing down, she had no idea who she was dealing with. Let her try, I said coldly. We're not settling. The courtroom 3 weeks later. Haley walked in with her lawyer, dressed in soft colors, her hair curled perfectly, her makeup designed to make her look like a helpless victim. But I wasn't fooled. And neither was Diane. The judge listened as Mathers painted me as a workaholic, a man who had driven his wife into another man's arms. He spoke about Haley's sacrifices for our family, how she had been lost and confused. Then Diane stood. She didn't raise her voice. Didn't need to. She simply pressed play. And suddenly, the entire courtroom was filled with Haley's laughter. The nanny cam footage played on a screen, showing everything, Haley sneaking Eric into the house, checking the door, whispering like a lovesick teenager. Mathers tried to object. But the damage was done. Haley's face went white. She knew it was over. 2 weeks later. The judge ruled in my favor. I got full custody of Noah. The house. The car. Everything. Haley. She got nothing. No spousal support. No custody. No sympathy. She stood outside the courthouse after the verdict, arms crossed, eyes burning with fury. You ruined my life, she hissed. I smiled. No, Haley. You did that all by yourself. And with that, I turned and walked away, finally, completely free.